The knife paused in my hand the moment my granddaughter spoke. Not because the cake resisted, but because her voice didn't. She didn't whisper like a scared child. She didn't hesitate. She didn't cry. She said it plainly, the way someone states a fact they've already accepted. And in that single sentence, something inside me shifted. The frosting beneath the blade cracked where I'd piped it too thick, trying to make the rosettes look fuller than they were. Lemon cake, lavender glaze, a flavor my daughter loved. Not one I ever chose for myself. The kitchen smelled sweet. Vanilla sugar flowers brought in earlier that morning. Hydrangeas sat in glass jars wrapped with twine, arranged carefully along the counter like props. My daughter Harper called it soft aesthetic. I let her do it. I had been letting things happen for a very long time. The house was full, but not alive. People moved gently, spoke softly, laughed at the right moments. The kind of sound that exists when everyone is performing comfort instead of feeling it. Julian, my daughter's partner, poured sparkling cider into vintage glasses he'd brought in a padded case, like this was a shoot, not a birthday. Harper stood near the window, perfectly lit without trying, cream linen dress, barefoot, hair pinned in that effortless way she'd mastered. And me. I stood at the island with a knife in my hand and my granddaughter watching me like she was waiting for something to break. My back straightened on its own, remembering decades of long shifts. My knees locked the way they always did when I refused to sit down out of stubbornness. My hands went steady. She stepped closer as if she might repeat herself. She didn't need to. I'd heard her. This wasn't drama. This wasn't exaggeration. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I smiled, finished the cut, and slid the knife cleanly through the cake. Applause followed. Someone lifted a phone. Julian leaned into frame, arm around Harper's waist, smiling like they were unveiling a product. Maya, my granddaughter, didn't clap. She didn't look away. I handed her a plate. She didn't take it. That's when I understood something clearly for the first time that day. This celebration didn't belong to me. It never had. And just so you know, this isn't the kind of story where everything explodes all at once. No shouting. No dramatic exits. No slammed doors. It begins quietly, with a cake I didn't want, in a kitchen decorated for someone else, and a warning from a girl who still believed I deserved one. If you've ever smiled too long in a room where you didn't belong, you'll understand what comes next. After the guests drifted away and the noise softened, I found Maya waiting near the pantry. She stood still, phone in her hand, screen dimmed. Her thumb hovered near the edge like she was deciding whether to press play. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Julian's laughter floated in from the living room. Too loud, too practiced. Harper had disappeared down the hall with her lap, with on a quick call with her brand team. Everything in this house had become content. Memories. Meals. Moments. All of it repurposed into background for someone else's story. Maya placed the phone in my palm. I tapped the screen. At first there was static, then Julian's voice. Low, casual, comfortable in a way that only comes when someone feels completely safe saying what they really think. She's almost there, he said. One more slip. One more moment where she forgets something in public, and the doctor will sign off. I didn't breathe. Then Harper's voice came through. Controlled. Measured. I already have the language written. We just need to move before the next product long. If we wait too long, it complicates the narrative. I stopped the recording. The room felt suddenly too clean. Too bright. I handed the phone back and stared at the bowl of lemons on the counter. For half a second, I imagined throwing one, just to hear something break. Instead, I reached for a dish towel and wiped a counter that was already spotless. They want me gone, I said. Not to Maya, but to the room. They want your image, she replied quietly, not your voice. I thought of every time I had made space for Harper, when she froze before her first recital and begged me to stand in the wings, when she hated her school and needed to come home, when her first relationship ended and she slept in her childhood room, claiming the bed still smelled like safety. She came back, and slowly, the house became hers. The mason jars, the linen curtains, the abstract art that meant nothing but cost too much. I didn't choose any of it. I allowed it. Because that's what love looks like when you don't realize you're shrinking. There's more, Maya said. She pulled a folder from her bag, printed emails, insurance documents, a typed schedule for an in-home evaluation by a doctor I'd never met. They were planning to declare me unfit, not loudly, not cruelly, cleanly, efficiently, to transfer assets, to take control of everything I'd built. I folded the towel and placed it neatly by the sink. Then I looked out the window at the garden I used to tend. The rosemary had grown wild. The basil was gone. Something else had taken root. Something that wasn't mine. I didn't go upstairs that night. I sat in the kitchen long after the candles burned down, long after Julian packed up his equipment, long after Harper retreated to the guest room she no longer asked permission to use. The house wasn't quiet. It settled. Pipes clicked. The old oak outside creaked. A car passed slowly over gravel. I counted the sounds to stay grounded. But memory came anyway. There was a time Harper stood right where I was standing now, flower on her nose, ponytail swinging, asking why dough rose and why some recipes used zest instead of juice. I never told her I did know everything. I let her believe I did. Back then, the stove was unreliable. It clicked too long before the flame caught. She hated that sound, so I lit it before she came into the room, even if it meant doing it twice. I joked that I was braver than any firefighter. She used to laugh with her whole chest. That laugh doesn't survive adulthood. The cabinets were hers now. New knobs. Glass jars with handwritten labels. A backsplash painted without asking. Julian said it looked cleaner. I said nothing. I opened the drawer beneath the stove, the one where I used to hide birthday cards and little notes. Most were gone, thrown away during some decluttering phase. One remained, a folded yellow paper, edges worn. A red crayon heart. Inside it read, "You make everything better." I placed it back exactly where it was, closed the drawer softly. The silence didn't comfort me anymore. It confirmed what I already knew. When Maya came down in the morning, I was still at the table. I hadn't slept. Rest didn't feel safe. The folder sat between us. It wasn't thick, maybe a dozen pages, but it weighed more than any cookbook I'd ever written. These weren't accusations, they were plans. The first document gave Harper partial access to my digital accounts, with a signature that looked enough like mine. The second reference transferring my cooking studio to an LLC Harper had quietly registered months earlier. The third was an insurance policy I'd never heard of. Julian listed as beneficiary. The payout was too large. I didn't speak. Neither did Maya. I opened a drawer I rarely used. Inside were Harper's knives, new, polished, sharp. Mine were boxed in the garage. I touched the edge of one blade, just enough to feel it. Then I closed the drawer and locked it. I'd installed that lock years ago, telling Harper it was for safety. The truth was simpler. I needed one drawer that was mine. There were 2 keys, one on my ring. One I'd given her, I checked. Mine was still there. That night after Harper returned from yoga, I checked again. Unlocked. Not broken. Opened with the second key. I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair until morning. Something had changed. And it wasn't about money. It was about erasure. On Wednesday, Harper announced she wanted to film a spontaneous mother-daughter segment. Authenticity, she said. Julian arrived 20 minutes later with his gear. The kitchen rearranged itself before I finished my coffee. Logos replaced my aprons. Lighting shifted. I was asked to stand where the light was best. I stood where I always had in the center. Maya moved quietly, watching, recording. And as the cameras rolled, I understood one thing clearly. They weren't building a legacy. They were building a product, and I was the packaging. The camera light felt warmer than usual. Julian adjusted it twice, tilting his head like a sculptor studying stone. Harper watched the monitor instead of me, lips pressed together in that thoughtful way she used when something wasn't aligning with vision. I sat where they told me to sit, not because I had to, but because I wanted to see how far they would go. Just be natural, Harper said, smiling without looking up. Talk about how you taught me everything. I nodded. The word everything hung in the air longer than it should have. Julian counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. And just like that, I became a memory on demand. I spoke about recipes, about long afternoons, about flour-dusted counters and burned first attempts. The comments began appearing instantly on the monitor. She's adorable, goals. Protect her at all costs. Harper beamed. Julian leaned closer to the screen. No one noticed Maya standing in the doorway, phone angled downward, recording not the performance, but the pauses between it. The moments where Harper's smile vanished, where Julian muttered corrections, where I was asked to repeat a sentence because it didn't sound warm enough. This was not family time, this was production. After filming, Harper kissed my cheek. You did great, she said. Really great. I thanked her. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I went to the garage, the boxes were still there, dusty, unlabeled, forgotten. Inside one, wrapped in an old apron, were my notebooks, handwritten recipes, dates, margins filled with changes, corrections, notes, not content, craft. I flipped through one and felt something I hadn't felt in years, ownership. The next morning I made a call, not to a lawyer, not to a friend, to the bank. I asked simple questions, the kind people don't ask until it's too late. The answers came carefully, but they came. There had been access attempts. There were pending authorization requests. There was unusual activity tied to a shared device, Julian's device. I thanked the representative and hung up. My hands didn't shake, they steadied. Maya came home from school early that day. She sat across from me at the table, legs tucked beneath her, eyes sharper than any adult in the house. They're planning something, she said. I know. She slid her phone toward me. Another recording. Julian again. She won't fight it, he said. She doesn't even realize what's happening. Harper responded calmly. We just need to frame it as concern. People love concern. People, not family. Audience. That night, I locked my bedroom door. For the first time since Harper moved back in, it felt strange, unnatural, necessary. At 2:40 a.m., someone tried the handle. Not hard, not loud, just enough. I didn't move. I waited. The footsteps retreated. I slept anyway. The evaluation was scheduled for Friday. A doctor I'd never met. Arranged by Harper. Marketed as routine. I dressed carefully that morning. Neutral colors. Flat shoes. Hair pinned neatly. I wasn't trying to impress. I was refusing to confirm a lie. The doctor asked me questions from a tablet. Dates. Names. Sequences. I answered all like them. He smiled politely. Julian shifted in his seat. Harper crossed her legs tighter. Then the doctor asked, Do you feel confused often? I met his eyes. No, I said. I feel observance. Maya coughed. The doctor made a note. The evaluation ended early. Julian didn't look at me. Harper thanked him too many times. That evening, Harper confronted me. You embarrassed us, she said. I folded laundry. I answered questions. You undermined the narrative. There it was. Narrative. I looked up slowly. I am not your storyline. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. The next week, things shifted. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Doors closed softly. Phones tilted away. They thought I didn't notice. They were wrong. I began keeping notes. Dates. times, phrases. Not out of fear, out of preparation, Julian scheduled another shoot, this one bigger. A legacy video, he called it. I agreed. They smiled too easily. They thought compliance meant surrender. Maya helped me choose my sweater. Dark blue did. Not nostalgic. The live stream began at noon. Thousands joined. Harper spoke first, about love, about care, about transition. She placed a hand on my knee. I removed it gently. Then it was my turn. I looked into the camera. And for the first time, I didn't perform. I want to thank everyone for watching, I said. But I need to say something that hasn't been part of the plan. Julian froze. Harper's smile tightened. This house, I continued, is not a set. My life is not a brand, and concern does not require secrecy. The comments slowed. Maya stood just out of frame, recording everything. Julian reached for the camera. Too late. I am capable, I said calmly. And I am aware. The live stream cut abruptly. Harper stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. That night, I packed a small bag, not to leave, to be ready. Maya hugged me longer than usual. You did good, she whispered. I smiled. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something they couldn't edit. The house didn't explode after the live stream ended. That surprised me. No shouting, no accusations, no dramatic collapse. Just silence, thick, deliberate, and unfamiliar. Julian unplugged the camera without looking at me. Harper stood perfectly still, like someone waiting for instructions that weren't coming. The comments were still scrolling on the monitor when the screen finally went black, cutting off thousands of strangers mid-sentence. I felt lighter the moment it ended, not relief clarified. Harper spoke first. You blindsided us, she said quietly. I folded my hands in my lap. You ambushed me, I replied. I responded. That wasn't the agreement. There was never an agreement, I said. There was permission, and I withdrew it. Julian finally looked up. You've ruined months of planning, he said. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was honest. You planned around me, I said. You didn't plan with me. That distinction mattered. They didn't answer. That night I slept with the bag beside my bed, not packed for escape, but prepared for truth. At 6:40 am, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. I didn't need to listen closely. I already knew the tone, damage control. By mid-morn, Harper knocked on my door. She didn't wait for an answer. She sat on the edge of my bed like she used to when she was a teenager, except this time she didn't look small. She looked strategic. We can fix this, she said. We'll reframe it. We'll explain that you were emotional. People respond to vulnerability. I studied her face, the confidence, the calculation, the certainty that I could still be shaped. No, I said simply. She frowned. You don't understand how this works. I understand exactly how it works, I replied. That's why I'm done. Julian tried next. He approached it differently. You don't want this getting messy, he said calmly. Public misunderstandings can spiral. Truth isn't messy, I said. Secrecy is. He leaned against the doorway. You think people will side with you? I don't care, I said. I'm not running a campaign. That unsettled him. People like Julian don't know what to do when attention stops being the goal. That afternoon, Maya came home with a printed page folded in half. She handed it to me without a word. It was a post, screenshots from the live stream already circulating. Clips, pauses, moments that couldn't be re-edited. The comments were different now. Why did they cut the stream? She sounds clear to me. Why does concern need contracts? Harper scrolled through it later and slammed her phone down. They're turning, she said. No, I replied gently. They're thinking. The lawyer arrived on Thursday, not mine. Theirs. He was polite, smooth, efficient. He spoke in hypotheticals. Sometimes families misunderstand intentions. Sometimes authority needs clarity. I handed him a folder, my folder. Inside were copies of everything, the recordings, the documents, the bank statements, the evaluation notes. He flipped through them carefully. Then he closed the folder. I'll need to review this, he said. You do that, I replied. He didn't come back. 2 days later, Harper packed. Quietly, she didn't announce it. She didn't ask permission. She moved through the house like someone trying not to leave fingerprints. Julian followed, dismantling the studio piece by piece. Lights gone. Tripods removed. Cables coiled. The house breathed again. Before she left, Harper stood at the door. This didn't have to happen, she said. It happened because it had to, I replied. She waited for something else. An apology, a crack, a reversal. None came. She left. The house felt enormous after that. Not empty. Honest. Maya stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she chose to. She cooked dinner the first night. Burned the rice. We laughed. That laugh, full, surprised, real, had survived. A week later, the letter arrived. From a media outlet, they wanted a statement. Not a story. A statement. I wrote 3 sentences. I am capable. I am informed. And my life is not a brand. I didn't add anything else. They printed it anyway. People moved on quickly. That's the thing about attention. It's loyal to novelty, not truth. Harper's account went quiet for a while. Julian rebranded. They always do. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. What I did instead was reclaim. I changed passwords, separated accounts, rewrote permissions. I met with my own lawyer. She listened carefully. Then she said, You caught this early? I nodded. Earlier than they thought. The kitchen changed back slowly. Not all at once. One drawer at a time. My knives returned. My notes found new shelves. The mason jars stayed, but now they held what I chose. I planted basil again. It grew. One afternoon, Maya asked, Are you sad? I thought about it. No, I said. Precise. She smiled like she understood. Months passed. Quiet ones. Good ones. I taught a small class at the community center. No cameras, no scripts, just hands and questions and mistakes. People listened differently when nothing was being sold. One evening, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a cookbook mock-up, my recipes, my handwriting copied, cleaned, redesigned. A note fell out. We can still do this together. I closed the box. Didn't respond. The truth is, some endings don't come with closure. They come with boundaries. I learned something important through all of this. Love doesn't require surrender. Care doesn't need control. And family is not defined by access. Sometimes I sit at the table late at night. The same one where the cake once sat. I remember the knife pausing, the warning. The moment everything shifted, and I'm grateful, because not everyone gets a warning. Not everyone gets time. I did, and I used it. Maya leaves for college next year. She tells people her grandmother taught her how to listen, to herself most of all. That might be the only legacy that matters. The house is quiet now. Not staged, not curated, just lived in. And that, finally, is enough.